Hey y'all, I'm Joanie, greedy addict alcoholic.
Johnny.
I've been clean since 9/22 of 21, and that's a miracle. I'm going to try really hard not to swear while I'm sharing my story, but if I slip, please forgive me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, kind of what happened, but I really want to focus more on the time that I've been in recovery and what's happened during that time and how I've survived that and how I've grown. So I was born in Utah, but was most of my life in Wyoming. Moved about 23 times, so I've been kind of everywhere. My family is like the definition of dysfunctional. I have 6 parents, 9 siblings, none of them full blood related. My brother right underneath me is 3 months younger than me, so that kind of tells you a little bit about that. And with that vast variety of family, I have some that are uber religious. I have others that are severe alcoholics, addicts. And there was a lot of domestic violence growing up. So, aside from that, I was abandoned by 3 of my parents at a very young age. Like many in the rooms, I endured sexual molestation. So it was a rough childhood. I had my first drink at age 4. The adults in my family thought it would be really fun to get us drunk and laugh at us while they were drunk. So I was introduced to it at a pretty early age. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in that, but anyone that knows anything about, well, most of us do in here, about alcoholism and domestic violence, it was ugly. But I bounced around between parents and started smoking weed in the 9th grade. Had my first real drunk, I'm pretty sure it was in the 7th grade. But by 9th grade, it was blackout. And that's just who I am. I don't want any ice, I don't want any mixers, and I'm not just going to have a couple. I did okay, actually, in school. I think that was an outlet for me. I ended up getting an academic scholarship, how I don't know, because I did party quite a bit in high school, but I did. And I ended up going to school down in Albuquerque. That did not go well. I was assaulted for the first time down there when I was 18, and my solution to anything is, like most, numbing it. And so I started drinking quite a bit, started smoking quite a bit, and ended up at my math final completely wasted. Don't remember how I got there, and was woken up in an auditorium that was full of 300 plus students to it being empty and my teacher waking me up. So things spiraled pretty quickly, and I ended up returning home to Utah, Wyoming to try to get my stuff together. That didn't go well either because I continued to drink and to smoke. Around that time, I met my children's father. He is also one of us, not in recovery. He also struggles with that mental health stuff. So out of the 16 years I was with him, the best thing that I got out of that was 4 beautiful children. But it was a very violent marriage and very chaotic. We had to move multiple times because he couldn't hold down a job. And during this time when I had my kids, my 20s, very early 30s, I was dry. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was dry. I thought he had the problem, and I was the redheaded stepchild, the Al-Anon. In fact, that's where I first worked the 12 steps when I was up in Washington State. I was a part of that group, and very much control is kind of a thing in my life. Trying to control everything around me, but nothing inside of me. It was very violent. On top of that, I was born into a cult. And in that cult, and this is, I share this because it's important. All of this is an important part, right? It led up to the worst of my addiction and my alcoholism. Kind of set the stage, honestly. In that cult, I was trained from a toddler to be submissive, and that I was a second-class citizen, really, and that I got to have an opinion, but at the end of the day, my opinion didn't really matter. So while I'm in this violent marriage, I'm trying to figure out how to, handle all of this. And I'm instructed by those leaders to not leave, right? Because this person is in charge, not me. So fast forward to 2016, I'm trying to kind of figure out a safety plan. Because at this point, he's tried to kill me numerous times. But I've been instructed not to go. And I'm still dry at this point. So my parents had moved to Midland, Texas, and I thought, well, maybe if I go there, then I'll have this support system and it'll be okay. And I also, at the time, we were living near Seattle, Washington, I thought Midland would be safer, which is just kind of ironic. So don't judge me for this because I later became a client, but I got a job with CPS. And oddly enough, my specialty was sex abuse cases. So it was a pretty intense, and I worked in Odessa. It was a pretty intense caseload. So we move, and at this time, he's sober, or dry, I should say. He's never been sober. He's dry. And we get down here, and it's intense. It's a complete culture shock. I've lived in a lot of different geographical locations, but if you're from West Texas, born and raised, you are a different breed. You are a different breed. And I'm happy to call this place home, but you're strong, very strong, right? So I had to figure out how to come from Seattle and kind of meld into mostly the work environment, right? So everyone drank. Everyone drank at work. That's how they dealt with all the stress of their cases. And I think it was 2 months in, my oldest had a psychotic break. The move had, on top of her entire childhood, the move had broke the camel's back, so to speak. And she was in and out of psych hospitals, struggling with suicide attempts, which ultimately moved into homicidal tendencies. So I had all of this going on at home, plus their father, who pretty much just sat on the couch and didn't really do much of anything. He wasn't drinking, so I still felt kind of grateful for that. But I made the choice to start going out to the bar with coworkers to try to alleviate some of the stress in my life, some of those feelings of fear. And that was really my primary emotion my whole life, was fear. I didn't understand that until I came into recovery, but that was the only thing that I really think that I experienced the majority of my life, was fear, and how to manage that fear, how to numb that fear, and how to survive all of the ugliness in my life, to numb all of that so that I could take all of the abuse, right? So I told you earlier I was a blackout in high school. So that happened pretty quickly. My drug of choice is more and all of it. So things are chaotic. I'm drinking, and my children's father, I don't remember how many times he tried to take my life, but the last time was in 2017, and I woke up to him trying to strangulate me. And something snapped, and I was just done. And the support system that I thought I had, this is, I think, noteworthy, was not really there. Unfortunately, they have their own challenges, right? And they don't understand mental health or addiction very well. But I had enough, and so I kicked him out. Um, Again, though, at this time I'm already drinking. And I come in contact with an individual who later became my first trafficker. So I'm a domestic violence survivor, but I'm also a human trafficking survivor. And I didn't think I was naive. I really didn't. You know, I lived a few places. I had addicts and alcoholics as family members, a husband, been exposed to a lot of violence, and a lot of ugliness where I worked. So I didn't think that I was naive, but man, was I. So this person quickly love bombed me and then flipped the script and blackmailed me into doing everything that he wanted. And the drinking significantly increased. So that went on for a few months, and then I met my second trafficker. And that individual's who introduced me to all the things. The first time he gave me a bump of Coke, I was blackout, but it just went quickly downhill from there, right? So when I came in, they told me my DOC was meth, but really it was all of the things. It was all of the things, and it was really violent. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. It was horrific. It was violent. During that time, I went through my divorce, got custody of my kids, but by the end of, or in the middle of those things, none of my kids were with me. They had all gone to their father's home. My third, let me count, right? My third child stayed the longest, and she kind of gave me some crap the other day because she says I only talk about the time that her youngest sibling saved my life. And she's like, what about me? Like, I did it a lot. So I'm going to mention her today just because she said that. But it's true. She was there the first probably year and a half. She's the one that stayed, and she stayed because she was trying to protect me. And she stopped me from killing myself many, many times. Because I thought really the only way out was to die. So fast forward, all the horror. My youngest comes back, and my trafficker went after her. It woke me up, and I said, absolutely not. And we escaped that situation. Unfortunately, during all that time, with the abandonment and everything, my kids had gone through their own hell. And they all were in active addiction and alcoholism. So, and they had also become the target for their father because he no longer had me as a target. So we escape, and that's important for later. We escape, and I go to my mom's to detox, and not that any of you would detox at her house, but I wouldn't recommend that. She's very old school, still pretty religious, and so you're up at 6, and you don't take naps, and coming down off of a lot of things, that's really hard to not be able to nap, and you're going to stay busy, but I made it through that, right? And she found me treatment, and for anyone that didn't go to treatment and you came straight into the rooms, I get kind of emotional when I bring this up, but hats off to you, like seriously, because I don't think I would be standing here if that was the route that I had. I mean, hopefully I would be standing here, but I just think that's incredible for anyone that's done it that way. But she finds me treatment. I go to treatment. I forgot there were people there. That was super overwhelming. I hadn't looked people in the eye for a really long time. I hadn't been around anything really besides a trap house in a really, really long time. So it was foreign. It was overstimulating. And then on top of that, I had to feel my emotions for the first time in a really, really long time. And there were a lot of them. But it was heavy on my mind that I had thought the only way out of all of that was death. And I tried many, many times. I don't even know how many times I've overdosed, either accidentally or on purpose. But here was this chance for a way out that didn't include death. So I did everything that they told me. I went to all the things, and they gave me this blue book. Bach. I'm a little nervous. They gave me this blue book, and I read the whole thing. The whole thing. It was like I was reading about myself. I was like, what the? And I know everyone says that, but it was crazy. And I wasn't like a model. A model client, you know? I wasn't the well-adjusted lady you see today. But I had some people at treatment that really believed in me, and they actually advocated for me. There was a time that they didn't think that I would do well there, and they were going to ship me off somewhere else, and I'm really, really glad they didn't. So I completed inpatient, and as I'm getting ready to discharge, they're talking to me about IOP and sober living. And about a week before this, I had been talking to my kids, and my son, who's my second child, had poured some of his father's beer out, and they got into a physical altercation, and CPS was involved at that time down there with them, but he kicked them out of the house. So my just turned 17-year-old, my 15-year-old, and my 13-year-old were all homeless while I was in treatment. And I wanted to run and go get them. And I had a brother in recovery, I'm still close to him today, who told me, what the hell are you going to do for them? He said, if you go to them right now, you're all just going to end up homeless, and you might end up dead. And that was really, really, really hard, because I knew that I had already abandoned them, and they had already been through so much. And I wanted to be there for them, but he was right. He was so right. The first day I got out of treatment, I was headed to sober living. We stopped at Market Street, and that day I knew for a fact that he was right, because when we went in, I was I couldn't even go into the grocery store. It just freaked me out. It was so overwhelming. Everything, I really don't like the word trigger, but everything was triggering the hell out of me. I'm so incredibly grateful for sober living, because it gave me this little structure and accountability to like figure out how to do this outside world stuff. And I kind of was feisty at sober living a few times. That fear would set in, right? And I'd think, no, it has to be this way. It has to be this way. And man, we can just freak ourselves out over the silliest things. I'm a massive overthinker, and fear is usually the culprit. Anyway, so finished sober living. My kids end up in a stable-ish place. They end up with their oldest sibling, who also was in active addiction and alcoholism, but it wasn't violent, and they had a roof over their head. So I know that I have to dig in. I have to start the healing. I have to do the work. I have to find the sponsor. A lot of people say 90 meetings in 90 days, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm doing a meeting a day for a year. And I did that. Sometimes multiple meetings a day in that year. Because I knew what it was like to be at the very, very, very bottom. And I knew what would happen, not just to myself, but to my kids if I did that again. So I moved out of sober living in January-ish. I have an hour, right, Ernie? Okay. Sorry. I moved out of sober living, and my my two daughters, are going to come live with me. And I'm building everything back up. Y'all, my credit score, this is so embarrassing. My credit score was a 382 coming out of that. I didn't even know it went under 400. I had no idea. Not only that, the just overwhelming part of being back in the outside world, and then making sure I'm going through the steps, the meetings, right, counseling, therapy. I also started working with Voice of Hope. They do sex trafficking advocacy, and I needed all three of those. I have to work 3 tiers of recovery. And if I don't work all three, if I'm not working one of them, that will impact the other 2. So that's just really, really important for me. So my kids are moving back. I get a job at Lowe's Home Improvement. And I was thinking about this on the way here. Man, it's crazy just how, if you're doing this deal, things just line up. And this job at Lowe's, they were so supportive of me. They knew that I was in early recovery. I still struggled socially and with my filter. So I was really glad that I was in a place like Lowe's and they were okay with me saying the F word and things like that. But I had this supervisor, and she supported me going to meetings. She supported me stepping out to call my sponsor if I needed to. I would do this really weird thing that I get really anxious and I just randomly spin in a circle. It's freaking weird. I don't know. But she'd be talking to me and I'd just spin in a circle out of nowhere. And she wasn't just supportive, but she would make light of it, kind of like we do in the rooms, you know? And she ended up promoting me, letting me have access to large amounts of money. That was terrifying because that part of my brain is still there and I still have those fleeting thoughts, and then I play the tape all the way through. And during this time, I had found my first sponsor. And a lot of the times people will say, listen to the people in the rooms and look at them and see, if you see something or hear something that you want, that's who you're going to go and ask, right? Well, this girl hadn't said anything, nothing, but I felt really pulled to her. And I went and asked her afterwards, and turns out, not only did we have a lot of DOC stuff in common and childhood stuff in common, but she was also a trafficking survivor. And I love sharing that part because we all come from all these different paths, even though we have a lot of stuff in common. But it's important for all of us to share those different paths, right? Because there's something that you're gonna say that I'm gonna relate to, and something this person's gonna say that this person's gonna relate to, and it's just such a beautiful thing in this program. I've never experienced that anywhere else, personally. Anyway, so I work the steps with her, and I'm hungry. I wasn't like some people that were that might be timid about the 4-step. I was excited. I was excited to get all of that out. And so I just dove into that. I found a home group. Let me backtrack a little bit. So my kids come in January, and I'm moving out of sober living. And I realized, man, this is going to be really, really hard. Not only am I really early in recovery and still working my first round of steps, I'm healing, I'm trying to get my finances in order, and my kids are coming, and they have their own baggage now, a lot of it. And so I decided I'm going to take copies of everything at the sober living. So I take copies of the rules and I adjust them for our household. And I take copies of the accountability meeting that we had there weekly, and I decide we're going to have an accountability meeting. And when the kids move in with me, I tell them, so we have a few rules. Here are the rules, right? You have to be sober. Because if you relapse, there's a chance that I'm going to relapse, and then we're all not going to make it. And so you have to go to meetings. and you have to be in therapy because we're a mess. And then you have to go to school. So, it was really hard that first year. They had a lot of emotional damage. They had their own addictions to deal with, but they followed the rules for the most part. For the most part, they also had a lot of medical neglect. So we spent a lot of time catching up with stuff like that. My third kiddo had major hip surgery that year. So it was a lot to balance, and there's absolutely no way that I would have been able to without the rooms and without this program. And I'm happy to say that those three are still in sobriety today. My youngest, thank you. My youngest took the longest. She missed about 2 years of school throughout my active addiction, off and on, for various reasons. And so when she went back to school, it was all pretty raw for her, and she just kept relapsing at school. Oh my gosh. Every week we were relapsing or getting into a physical fight, or we were leaving campus. And so I share all that because that's the life stuff that happens in recovery, right? Just because I got clean and sober doesn't mean it's all sunshine and rainbows and everything's easy. No, what recovery gave me was the tools to handle all of that without going back to using. So they're going to meetings with me. They get sponsors. My son definitely struggled immensely. He got the brunt of a lot of the physical abuse when I was gone. And I really do credit the rooms. Not just therapy was helpful, but they'll tell you themselves that the rooms in this program is really what made the difference for them. So fast forward a little bit, we've got some stability under our belts. We're going to meetings. We're involved in a home group, and we've built this recovery family around us. And man, I really love addicts and alcoholics in recovery. You are my people. I love that I can completely be myself, and that my kids can completely be themselves, right? Which is totally different than being around family. My mom still to this day really struggles when I call myself an addict or an alcoholic. She'll say, "That's not the only piece of you. I wish you'd stop labeling yourself like that." And then I have to remind her, "Mom, it is part of who I am. And if I don't remind myself of that, then we're going to be back where we were almost 4 years ago." And then her whole face will change. She'll say, "No, let's not do that." So we're doing the deal. I've made it through the steps. I've started sponsoring. I was one of those that didn't know how to say no. And so I had way too many sponsees, way too many. I learned that you can't really help in the way that you are meant to help if you have stretched your plate so thin. And my sponsor actually talked to me, and she said, do you not realize that you're kind of sponsoring your kids? Even though they have their own sponsors, like you're like running a sober living at home. And you need to like factor that into all of this on top of working. And so I pared it down a little bit. And it was around that time that I decided I was going to be brave and apply to graduate school at Tech from the encouragement of several people. And I was really nervous about it because I was very, very much aware that my brain had not fully recovered. I forgot things all the time. I know I knew my emotion regulation still wasn't quite there. Emotional sobriety. Really, I hadn't figured that out yet. But I applied and I got accepted. And so I'm working, and then I also changed jobs. I applied at Tech. I'm currently a academic advisor at Psychological Sciences at Tech. So I've got this job. Kids are kind of starting to balance out a little bit. I did pull my 2 girls out of public school, and that stopped the relapsing until they could get, it was almost like, we're going to put you in in-home rehab away from the easy access at school. And that, it gave them some structure and some time. So that had calmed down. So working full-time in school, doing the deal. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to share, there were two things that really came to mind. You hear quite a bit that there are people in recovery and there are people around recovery. And so part of my time in recovery was learning that lesson. So I get involved with who I think is my tribe. And really it was a clique. And it pulled me away from the fellowship. So while I'm doing all of this, and in hindsight, I see how that impacted my recovery. I stopped spreading out my recovery. I was only going to one specific meeting. I wasn't engaging with other people. It was just this little tiny group, which I think it's important to have a tribe, right? I think it's important for you to, because for me, I have a circle now, and it's a small circle, but it doesn't dictate my decisions out with everyone else, if that makes sense. And I think it's important to be aware of that. I think it's important to make sure we don't get that tunnel vision with our fellows. Because honestly, if I had been on the outside of the clique and had that happen to me in early recovery, I know that really would have impacted me. And I don't know that I would be where I'm at in my recovery today. I feel like I'm all over the place, but the other thing I wanted to mention was relationships. So while all this is going on, when I first came into treatment, to recovery, I thought that I was good. Especially after everything I had been through. I was like, I don't want any of that. None of that. Well, a few months in, it turns out I'm still human, and we need connection. And romantic connection is a piece of that, right? But I'm still really don't know who I am, because I haven't really gotten this emotional sobriety down. I haven't spent enough time learning who I am, which is really another thing that recovery taught me. The steps in recovery have taught me who I am. I had little glimpses, little pieces that I knew, but I really didn't know Joanie at all until the steps. Anyway, someone smiled at me. Someone smiled at me, and he was nice to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, he loves me. And it was way before I had a year, and he did not love me. In fact, there was violence in that relationship. I think that's also important. Not just are people around recovery not in it, but a lot of us in the rooms are sick, and not everyone is working on their defects of character. So it's important to not only know who you are, but fix your picker. So there were several I don't even know that you would call them relationships, y'all. There were short interactions. Thankfully, though, because I was plugged into this, because I had good sponsorship, because I was in therapy, I learned from each of those rather than them taking me out. Because I've had sponsees that have gotten into unhealthy relationships that have taken them back out. I've had brothers and sisters in recovery that have had relationships end poorly and them not have that emotional sobriety to keep them in recovery, and it's taken them back out. And some of them didn't make it back in, right? So I feel really blessed about that. But what I learned from each of those, because I was plugged in and I was still doing the work, really it was like these little glimpses of what my sound, it's kind of the sex inventory, what my sound insane ideal relationship really is. So each experience with one of those individuals, I was like, oh, I definitely am not okay with physical abuse, which you would think would be a no-brainer, but but that was one. You know, I'm definitely not okay if you're in active addiction. That's a deal breaker. I'm not. So the list goes on, right? And it starts to give me this picture of what is okay with me, what's not okay with me. But it also teaches me about myself too, and gives me some self-worth at the same time, right? Like, oh, well, actually that's not okay, and it's not a reflection on me, right? So I think it was about 2 years ago, I really, really learned about emotional sobriety. Really, I had such a good opportunity, right? I reconnected with a high school sweetheart who was also in recovery. He had about 18 months. He was in forced recovery because he was on paper, and that doesn't always mean that it's not, that the person isn't all the way in, right? But long story short, as soon as he completed his parole, he was like that night, like the night after the hearing, he was off to the races. But it was the first relationship that I had had in recovery that had any semblance of healthy, right? And that I had actually felt any kind of love in. And when that all happened, it brought up a lot of old stuff for me, especially that fear. And there have been a few times in my sobriety that there have been fleeting thoughts of, I don't want to feel this, I want to numb. Like, get me a drink, get me some dope. And I had that fleeting thought for the last time about 2 years ago, right? And it terrified me. It didn't scare me, it terrified me. More than the fear of feeling the feelings. And I did what I was taught. I reached out. I reached out to my recovery family, and they came over, a few people came over, and they started talking to me about this thing called emotional sobriety. And I really did not want to hear it. I wanted them to co-sign some of my BS. And they told me, you need to go to a meeting right now. And I was like, I do not want to go to a meeting. I do not want to see anybody. I would like to isolate and feel bad for myself, please. And then I let them know that fleeting thought that I had had, and they said, you have to go to a meeting. And I took that suggestion, even though I kind of kicked and screamed like a little toddler. And I went to the meeting, and it reminded me of early recovery. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got to get back to the basics. I've got to dig in deep. And so I started going to meetings again every day. And I found a new sponsor. And I think that's important. It's okay if you've had the same sponsor forever and that sponsor works for you. But if you are going through something and you're not getting what you need, in recovery with that person, it's absolutely okay to change sponsors. And in my experience, it helped me to grow more in recovery. And it helped me get through some really hard times in recovery. So I get a new sponsor, I rework the steps, do another mini 4-step, and I learned that emotional sobriety is actually really amazing, helpful, and it makes your life so much easier. For me, reacting on emotion because of what I had gone through my whole life was a bit of a survival skill, right? Kind of like, I don't know if you've heard the elephant in the room, like don't upset the alcoholic or they're gonna blow up, you know what I mean? So that had been kind of it was a learned behavior. And emotional sobriety taught me that when I have a feeling, number one, it's not gonna kill me. Like fear is never going to kill me. It's not, even if it feels like it. And also that it will pass. And that there's a healthy way to deal with it. And if getting into the literature doesn't help in the moment, then I go to a meeting. If I'm not able to go to a meeting, the first thing I do is I text my sponsees. And if I'm having a moment now, if I'm going through something challenging, I reach out to my sponsees and I check on them. Or I send them an uplifting message. Or I reach out to someone in my family I go into service. And it immediately calms me down. Now, on rough days, I might have to do that several times. And that's okay. Time to react. So, I make it through that. Not only do I make it through that, but I come out so much stronger, which is so cool about this program. Not just have I learned who I am, not only am I safe, not only am I functioning, I'm a functioning human being, got a great job, I'm doing well in school, my kids are doing okay, but something challenging happened in my life and I didn't relapse. And it made me feel stronger. Y'all make me stronger. So, get through that. I'm plugging in to school. I actually graduated on the 10th with honors. So that was super shocking. I still every test I would go into, I would be terrified. I'm going to forget it all. I still have this addict brain. It's still not fully functioning. It was such a worry before something called comprehensive exam that I went and talked to the program director and I was like, listen, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail this. I can tell the difference between me and the normie students, and I'm just telling you, I feel at a disadvantage. And he's like, you'll be fine. And then every time I was fine. But so it was a master's in addiction counseling. I learned a lot. One of the things I learned was that there are schools of thought of different pathways to recovery. That was kind of a struggle for me because this is the path that I know works. What was really beautiful about that while I was in school is I got to share that with my classmates and I got to share that with my professors and give them a little bit of insight if they don't have the disease of addiction and alcoholism. So this last year, it's been really busy. I completed practicum, internship. I have some people in my life that were uber patient with me through that and supportive. And I've just been looking back and I just cannot believe that this is my life. Sorry. cannot believe that this is my life. And it wouldn't be. It would not be without the program of AA. I would not be standing here. I would not be alive. I would not be happy. I'm in a really great place with work, getting ready to take a national licensing exam that I do feel I'm not going to say I'm like 100%, but I feel pretty confident about. I have an amazing relationship with 3 of my kids. My oldest just went to IOP, so I'm really hopeful about that. We are not in communication at the moment, but I'm in an amazing relationship that I'm very grateful for. And I get to continue to be a part of this amazing thing called recovery. And I'm so, so grateful. And I know I'm a little short, but that's all I got.
All right.